Wow.
Please leave. Please leave. I am not okay with this. Please leave my job. I have to go.
Don't touch me. Don't touch me, little man. Move. Get back. Come on. Get back. Move, bro, move. Get back. Please move from my car. Bro, move, little Matt. Please move. That's Shante Butts' voice, filming her own stalker just days before he would execute her in front of her children. But here's the part that will haunt you. She wasn't just documenting harassment. She was unknowingly recording her own death sentence. Because in 2025, a 34-year-old mother was murdered for the most modern reason imaginable, for going viral with the wrong content. Shante's crime? Creating a social media series called All Deadbeat Daddy that exposed absent fathers and toxic relationships. Her punishment? 12 gunshot wounds delivered by the very man she was talking about, while her 6 children hid in terror, listening to their mother die for the sin of speaking her truth online. But here's what makes this case absolutely terrifying. Shante did everything right. She filed over 15 police reports. She had video evidence. She obtained restraining orders. She even fled her home and hid in a hotel. The police had issued a warrant for his arrest just 6 days before he killed her. None of it mattered, because little Mac Williams had been terrorizing women for 20 years, and the system kept letting him walk free. 36 days in jail for nearly strangling a woman to death. 59 days for stalking and tampering with security cameras. 2 days for striking a woman in the head with an object. This isn't just a murder story. This is the blueprint of how social media, domestic violence, and systemic failure converged to create the perfect storm that killed a mother who was just trying to survive. Before we dive into this case, I need to know something from you. In the comments, tell me, have you ever posted about your relationship problems on social media? Because what happened to Shante might make you think twice. And if you're someone who believes the justice system protects victims, hit subscribe, because this case will shatter that illusion. If you won't subscribe, at least tell me in the comments why you think you don't need to hear these stories. I'm genuinely curious what makes someone scroll past content that could literally save lives. Shante Letitia Butts wasn't supposed to make it. Born in West Palm Beach in the early 1990s, she entered the world already marked by abandonment. Her biological parents gave her up, and she spent her childhood bouncing between foster care and adoption, a system that taught her early that love was conditional and family was fragile. But Shante refused to let her past define her future. By her 30s, she had built an empire from nothing, juggling multiple businesses with the determination of someone who knew what it meant to have nothing. She worked as a home health aide, one of the most physically and emotionally demanding jobs in healthcare. Caring for elderly and disabled patients required not just medical knowledge, but genuine compassion, something Shante had in abundance despite her own trauma. But she didn't stop there. She launched Polished by Shay, a cleaning service that transformed homes and built a reputation for excellence throughout South Florida. Her entrepreneurial spirit didn't end with traditional services. Shante created a custom decor business, crafting unique floral arrangements with liquor bottles and elaborate money bouquets for special occasions. She had an eye for beauty and the business sense to monetize it. On top of everything else, she was building a social media presence as a content creator, turning her life experiences into relatable, often hilarious commentary that resonated with thousands of followers. She called herself a comedian, using humor as both shield and sword against life's hardships. The contrast couldn't have been starker. Here was a woman who had clawed her way from abandonment to success, building multiple income streams while raising 4 children. She was everything little Mac Williams wasn't: driven, responsible, forward-thinking. While she was building businesses and creating content, he was building a criminal record. While she was empowering other women, he was terrorizing them. The successful entrepreneur and the career criminal. A collision course that would end in tragedy. Shante's social media wasn't just entertainment. It was therapy broadcast to the world. Her most popular series, All Deadbeat Daddy, was raw, unfiltered, and brutally honest about the reality of dealing with absent fathers and toxic relationships. What she thought was empowerment would become her death warrant. Some women, I'm putting myself in that category. Make it okay for men not to be men, she said in one video that would later be used as evidence. Just being in our relationship because we so happy that somebody love us. But we could just love ourselves if that take care of the household. Her content was painfully relatable to thousands of single mothers who saw their own struggles reflected in her words. She talked about housing men who contributed nothing, about the exhaustion of doing everything alone while pretending to have a partner. In reality, we just not feeling like we housing a man, but in reality we housing a man, she continued, unknowingly describing the very dynamic that was enraging her killer. Shante used humor to process trauma, turning her pain into punchlines that helped other women feel less alone. Just ask y'all a question. When y'all come up to me and tell me about my man cheating, do you really think I'll be hurt? He cheat, I cheat, we cheat together, she joked, her laughter masking deeper wounds. But to Little Mac Williams, these weren't comedy skits. They were public humiliation. Every video felt like a personal attack, every laugh from her followers like mockery directed at him. While Shante thought she was empowering women to recognize their worth, she was unknowingly painting a target on her own back. The irony is devastating. A woman trying to help others escape toxic relationships became the ultimate victim of one herself. At 30 years old, Shante made a decision that revealed everything about her character. She decided to search for her biological father. Having grown up adopted, she carried a wound that success couldn't heal. The need to understand where she came from and why she was given away. The search ended in heartbreak. When she finally tracked him down and reached out, he rejected her completely. The man who had helped create her wanted nothing to do with the successful woman she had become. It was abandonment all over again, but this time she was old enough to understand the cruelty of it. But instead of letting this rejection destroy her, Shante channeled it into fierce protection of her own children. She was determined that her 4 kids would never feel the abandonment she had experienced. Every business venture, every late night, every sacrifice was for them, to give them the stability and unconditional love she had never known. The tragic irony is almost unbearable. While she was desperately seeking connection with the father who abandoned her, she was being stalked and terrorized by the father of her own children. The very thing she feared most, a parent who would hurt rather than protect, was hunting her down, determined to destroy the family she had fought so hard to build and protect.
Now in a WPBF 25 News investigation, we take a closer look at the criminal record of the man now charged with killing his ex-girlfriend. It happened Friday night at a home in Belgrade, where officials say Little Mac Williams fatally shot Shante Butts, a mother of 4. Another man in that home was also shot but survived. Our reporter Rachel Perry has learned the victim reported Williams for domestic battery and stalking within the last year.
Despite being found guilty of choking Shante Butts in July of last year, court records show the most jail time Little Mac Williams served was 157 days, with each case after that carrying less time in jail. On Friday night, Palm Beach County Sheriff's deputies arrested Little Mac Williams, claiming he broke into this home in Belglade before killing his ex-girlfriend, Shante Butts. WPBF 25 News went through Williams' court records, finding several felony convictions dating back to 2014 involving at least 3 different women. The first case involving Shante Butts, the victim in this weekend's homicide, was reported in July of 2024 when she called 911 to report Williams had forced his way into her home and choked her. He was found guilty of domestic battery by strangulation and sentenced to 157 days in jail. In October 2024, Williams served 48 days in jail for violating a no-contact order when officials say he showed up at Butts' home. A few months later, and Williams was found guilty of simple battery for breaking into Butts' home and fighting her. He served 66 days in jail. Roughly 10 days ago, Butts reported Williams was stalking her. Officials put out a warrant for his arrest, but just 6 days later, and he was arrested and charged in Butts' death.
There are frequent flyers when it comes to domestic violence, like in any other area of criminal law. The focus of the state attorney's office is to go after violent offenders and habitual offenders. And in domestic violence, that's no different.
Attorney Dave Ehrenberg can't speak to this specific case, but says domestic violence cases aren't always easy to prosecute.
It's a challenge for prosecutors to get a tough sentence for these perpetrators when their past conduct may not be admitted into the trial, although it will be considered by the court at sentencing.
Saying it's important for victims to help break the cycle.
The solution here is to continue to focus on habitual offenders, but also to help educate victims to speak up and cooperate, because there is no crime that has fewer victims participating in the prosecution than in domestic violence.
Williams is now in the Palm Beach County Jail facing charges of first-degree murder and attempted first-degree murder. We'll have a link to resources for victims of domestic violence on our website. In Belglade, Rachel Perry, WPBF 25 News.
Little Mac Williams wasn't a man who suddenly snapped. He was a predator who had been perfecting his craft for 2 decades. His criminal record reads like a blueprint for escalating domestic violence, a 20-year masterclass in how the system fails women by treating attempted murder as a minor inconvenience. The pattern began in 2004 and never stopped. Strangulation, stalking, breaking, and entering, terrorizing women who dare to leave him or reject his advances. But here's the most chilling part. Instead of his sentences getting longer as his violence escalated, they got shorter. The system was literally training him that violence against women had no real consequences. In 2014, Williams was charged with felony battery, strangulation, and false imprisonment after an ex-girlfriend reported that he had assaulted and raped her. Medical records documented the horror, swelling, bruising, and a massive hematoma on her forehead that could have killed her. This was attempted murder disguised as domestic violence. His punishment? 36 days in jail. 36 days for nearly ending a woman's life. 4 years later, in 2018, another ex-girlfriend accused Williams of stalking and trespassing at her home, tampering with her security cameras in a calculated campaign of psychological terror. The courts convicted him of trespassing, not stalking, not harassment, just trespassing. His sentence? 59 days. The system had actually given him more time for trespassing than for nearly killing someone. By 2023, the pattern had become absurd. Williams struck a different woman in the head with an unknown object during a dispute, sending her to the hospital. He pleaded guilty to domestic battery and was sentenced to 2 days in jail. 2 days for assault with a weapon that hospitalized a woman. Each conviction should have been a red flag. Each sentence should have been longer than the last. Instead, prosecutors kept reducing felony charges to misdemeanors, and judges kept handing out sentences that were more like weekend getaways than punishment. Williams learned that he could terrorize, assault, and nearly kill women with virtually no consequences. The system wasn't just failing to protect his victims. It was actively enabling his violence by teaching him that women's lives had no value in the eyes of the law. The numbers tell a story of institutional failure, so completed borders on criminal negligence. Little Mac Williams had been arrested for domestic violence-related crimes spanning 2 decades, and the longest sentence he ever received was 157 days for nearly strangling Shante Butts to death in July of 2024. Prosecutors repeatedly reduced felony charges to misdemeanors, turning attempted murders into simple batteries, transforming stalking campaigns into trespassing violations. It was a revolving door of justice that treated violence against women as a minor administrative issue rather than the serious crime it was. The pattern was so consistent it seemed intentional. Strangulation, the #1 predictor of domestic homicide according to experts, was routinely pleaded down to simple battery. Stalking, which terrorizes victims and often precedes murder, became trespassing. False imprisonment, a felony that shows clear intent to control and harm, disappeared from plea agreements entirely. Judges rubber-stamped these plea deals, handing out sentences measured in days rather than years. The message was clear. You can terrorize women, you can nearly kill them, you can stalk them and break into their homes, and the system will give you a timeout that's shorter than most people's vacations. Williams didn't just slip through the cracks. The system built him a highway to his next victim. July 24th, 2024, was the day Shante Butts almost died for the first time. Little Mac Williams forced his way into her Belle Glade home like a man possessed, his hands finding her throat with practiced precision. He put her in a choke hold so tight she nearly lost consciousness, then kicked her repeatedly as she gasped for air on the floor. When Shante managed to crawl toward her phone to call 911, Williams snatched it from her hands and fled into the night. She was left bruised, traumatized, and without any way to call for help, exactly how he wanted her. Deputies arrested Williams and charged him with multiple felonies: domestic battery by strangulation, witness tampering, and burglary. The evidence was overwhelming: Shante's injuries, her testimony, the clear pattern of escalating violence. This should have been the moment the system finally took him seriously. Instead, Williams pleaded guilty and received 157 days in jail. 157 days for nearly murdering a woman in front of her children. The judge issued a no-contact order as if a piece of paper could stop a man who had just proven he would break into homes and strangle women. It was the longest sentence Williams had ever received, and it was still a joke. The system had just taught him that attempted murder was worth less than 6 months of his time. The no-contact order might as well have been written in disappearing ink. By October 2024, Williams was back to his old patterns, calling Shante nonstop and banging on her front door like a man unhinged. Each violation should have sent him back to jail immediately. Instead, the system treated his terrorism as a minor inconvenience. When deputies arrested him for violating the no-contact order, he was released almost immediately. The message was clear: restraining orders were suggestions, not enforceable protections. Williams learned that he could violate court orders with virtual impunity, and his confidence grew with each slap on the wrist. November 2024 brought a new level of violation. Williams broke into Shante's house again, assaulted her again, and stole her phone again. The same pattern that had earned him 157 days, just months earlier. But this time, prosecutors had apparently decided that attempted murder was getting old. They reduced the felony domestic battery charge to a misdemeanor. A misdemeanor. Williams pleaded guilty to what was essentially a traffic ticket version of breaking into someone's home and assaulting them. His sentence? 66 days in jail, less than half of what he'd received for the previous, nearly identical crime. The pattern was becoming grotesquely clear. Each violation was met with weaker consequences, not stronger ones. The system was literally training Williams that his violence would be rewarded with shorter sentences. Instead of escalating penalties for a repeat offender, prosecutors and judges were de-escalating their response to his escalating violence. Williams was learning that he could terrorize Shante with complete impunity. Every arrest that led to a reduced charge, every short sentence, every early release was proof that the system valued his freedom more than her life. He was being systematically taught that Shante Butts was his property to terrorize, and no court order would stop him. July 1st, 2025, was the day Williams decided to take his terrorism public. He showed up at Shante's workplace, forcing her to film her own harassment as he refused to leave. The video she posted would become evidence in her own murder case. "Please leave," she can be heard saying, her voice tight with fear and frustration. "Please leave. I am not okay with this. Please leave my job. I have to go." But Williams wouldn't leave. He never left. That was the point, to show her that nowhere was safe, that he could find her anywhere, anytime. July 2nd brought a violation, so bizarre it revealed the depth of his obsession. Williams broke into Shante's home not to assault her, not to steal something valuable, but to take a bottle of soda from her refrigerator. A bottle of soda. It was psychological warfare disguised as petty theft, a message that he could enter her most private space whenever he wanted, take whatever he wanted, and there was nothing she could do to stop him. July 4th, Independence Day, brought the most chilling threat yet. Williams approached Shante and asked with mock concern, "Are you missing your firearm?" It wasn't a question. It was a confession and a threat rolled into one. He had stolen her gun, and he wanted her to know it. He wanted her to understand that he now had the weapon that would end her life. July 5th was the night terror came home to stay. Williams returned to Shante's house more than 20 times in a single night, each visit captured on her Blink doorbell camera. 20 times. He was pacing outside like a caged animal, testing her defenses, letting her know that sleep was no longer an option. The next morning, Shante went to the police station with tears streaming down her face. "I believe he's going to try and hurt me again," she told deputies, her voice breaking with exhaustion and fear. She had documented everything: the videos, the break-ins, the stolen firearm, the 20 visits in one night. Deputies finally issued a warrant for aggravated stalking. It was July 5th. The warrant was issued July 5th. Shante would be dead 6 days later. She fled to a hotel that night, posting on social media about how the system was failing her. She was right, and she was running out of time. Pause for a second. Shante documented everything. She had video evidence, police reports, witness testimony. In the comments, tell me, what would you have done differently? And if you think this could never happen to someone you know, you need to subscribe and share this, because statistically, you're wrong. If you're not subscribing, explain to me how ignoring these stories helps anyone. I'll wait. 11:47 p.m. The sound of breaking glass shattered the silence in Shantae's Belle Glade home. Little Mac Williams had finally come to finish what he'd started over a year ago. He didn't knock. He didn't call. He broke a window and climbed through like the predator he'd always been, hunting his prey in her own sanctuary. Shantae's oldest son heard the commotion and immediately knew what was happening. This wasn't the first time Williams had broken into their home, but something felt different this time. The boy grabbed his phone and dialed 911 with trembling fingers, his young voice about to document his mother's murder in real time. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher asked. My stepfather broke a window and came into the house, the boy whispered, trying to stay quiet while his world collapsed around him. Then came the voice that would haunt him forever, Williams calling out through the house, like a hunter tracking wounded prey. Where's your mother? The question was caught on the 911 recording, Williams' voice cold and methodical. He wasn't there to talk. He wasn't there to reconcile. He was there to execute the woman who had dared to expose him to the world through her social media posts. The dispatcher stayed on the line as terror unfolded in real time. The sounds that came next were the stuff of nightmares, struggling, choking, Shante fighting for her life as Williams strangled her just like he had done before. But this time, he wasn't planning to let her survive to call the police. Then came the gunshots. Not one, not two. 12 times Williams pulled the trigger, emptying his weapon into the woman who had tried so desperately to escape him. 12 gunshot wounds revealed this wasn't just murder. It was execution fueled by rage. The overkill showed his fury at being exposed, his hatred for a woman who had dared to speak her truth. The boy on the phone heard every shot, every moment of his mother's final struggle. I heard my mother being shot, he told the dispatcher, his voice breaking with trauma that would last a lifetime. While deputies raced toward the scene, Shante Butts was bleeding out on her own bed, surrounded by the children she had died trying to protect. Williams had finally gotten what he wanted, complete control over the woman who had refused to be silenced. But his victory would be short-lived, because outside, deputies were already surrounding the house, and his 20-year reign of terror was about to end in the most pathetic way possible. When deputies arrived at the scene, they expected to find a dangerous armed suspect barricaded inside or fleeing through the neighborhood. Instead, they found something far more pathetic. Little Mac Williams lying face down in the street with his hands behind his back, waiting to be arrested like a dog rolling over to show submission. There was no high-speed chase, no dramatic shootout, no final standoff between a killer and law enforcement. The man who had terrorized women for 20 years, who had just executed a mother in front of her children, surrendered like the coward he had always been. After years of preying on women who couldn't fight back, Williams folded the moment he faced real consequences. His surrender was as calculated as his violence had been. Williams knew that resisting arrest or fleeing would only add to his charges, and he was already facing the death penalty. So he lay in the street like roadkill, waiting for deputies to collect him and end his pathetic reign of terror. When questioned, Williams immediately began lying, claiming he didn't know who Shantae's boyfriend was, insisting he never fired the gun, and pretending he had no idea where the weapon was. But his lies were worthless. Shantae's children had witnessed everything, and the evidence of his guilt was written in blood across their home. At 11:58 p.m., just 11 minutes after her son's desperate 911 call, Shante Butts was pronounced dead. The woman who had built businesses, raised children, and tried to empower other women through her social media content was gone, silenced forever by the man she had tried so hard to escape. Her current boyfriend, who had been sleeping beside her when Williams broke in, survived his gunshot wound to the chest. He would live to testify about the night Tara came home, but he would carry the trauma of watching the woman he loved die in front of him. For children were left without their mother, their lives forever shattered by witnessing her brutal murder. The oldest son, who had shown incredible courage by calling 911 and trying to save his mother's life, was now a hero forced into a nightmare that would follow him forever. The most damning evidence in Shante Butts' murder isn't found in the crime scene photos or witness testimony. It's buried in 20 years of court records that read like a manual on how to enable a killer. Every prosecutor who reduced a felony to a misdemeanor, every judge who handed out days instead of years, every official who treated strangulation as simple battery had blood on their hands. The state attorney's office, perhaps embarrassed by their office's history of reducing Williams' charges, issued a statement emphasizing their commitment to prosecuting violent offenders and habitual domestic violence perpetrators. But their words ring hollow when measured against their actions, or lack thereof, over the past 20 years of Williams' documented terrorism. Shante's 4 children face a lifetime of trauma that no amount of justice can undo. Her oldest son, who showed incredible courage calling 911 while his mother was being murdered, will carry the weight of that night forever. The younger children, who hid in terror as gunshots rang through their home, will need years of therapy to process what they witnessed. They are the forgotten victims in this case. Children who lost their mother because the system failed to protect her. The Belglade community has rallied around Shante's memory, organizing vigils and demanding systemic change in how domestic violence cases are prosecuted. Local activists are pushing for stronger enforcement of restraining orders, harsher sentences for repeat offenders, and more resources for women trying to escape abusive relationships. But their efforts highlight a disturbing truth. It shouldn't take a mother's execution to spark demands for basic protection. This case isn't isolated. In 2023, a 34-year-old woman in Boynton Beach was gunned down in her apartment parking lot less than an hour after reporting her ex-boyfriend to police. Robin Caesar later confessed, telling detectives that her police report was the final straw. The parallels are chilling and prove that Shante's murder was part of a larger, deadly pattern of system failure that continues to cost women their lives across South Florida. Here's what I need from you right now. If this story made you angry, and it should have, then prove it. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because there are hundreds of Shantes out there right now, and their stories need to be told before it's too late. In the comments, I want you to share one thing you learned that you didn't know before watching this video. Just one thing. But if you're not subscribing, I have a question for you. What exactly are you waiting for? Another woman to die? Another system failure? Another family destroyed? Tell me in the comments what it would take for you to actually care enough to subscribe to content that exposes these failures. Because your silence isn't neutral, it's complicity. Share this video. Tag someone who needs to see it. And if you know someone in an abusive relationship, don't just send thoughts and prayers. Send resources. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233. Shante Butts deserved better. Her children deserved better. And the next victim deserves for you to give a damn enough to subscribe and share these stories. What's it going to be?